Hello, welcome to Candid Chats on Cancer. I'm Mary Robinson.
And I'm Jamie Moore. So Mary, who are we chatting with today?
Well, we have a survivor with us today. I'm really excited to say that Angie Schallbrook is with us today.
Angie, welcome.
Hi there, thanks for having me.
So what kind of cancer did you have?
I had breast cancer.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about
Absolutely.
your journey?
Well, she has a really unique story, just so you know. Like, there's a family history and stuff, so maybe
Yeah.
you should start with that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I go clear back to my aunt on my dad's side had breast cancer and died in her 40s from it. And we were always careful and knowing that we had that in our family. And then my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer at 49. She knew that was young. And she ended up getting a lumpectomy, and then she insisted, based on family history, to get a genetic testing done. This was 15 years ago, and they didn't do a lot of that then. But in her insistence, they did it, and she found out she was BRCA1 mutation positive.
What does that
okay,
mean?
yeah,
Whoa.
back that one up there. Okay.
So that is BRCA1 mutation. So it's a mutation in your genes that essentially gives you a 87% chance of getting breast cancer.
87.
So this travels down the mother side
Yes.
of the gene?
Yes. So, well, any side. If your dad had it or your mom had it. So you can have, you essentially, if one of your parents have it, you have a 50-50 chance of getting the mutation. That being said, I have three siblings, 2 sisters and a brother, and 3 out of 4 of us were positive. So at the age of 24, I found out I was positive with this genetic mutation. That's when I decided to start doing some prophylactic stuff to try to prevent cancers.
Right. So because your mother was tested positive for the gene, then you and your sisters went in and got tested also?
Yes.
How did they test you?
It's just a blood test, a simple blood test, and back 15 years ago, it was a little bit more difficult to get covered through insurance. Today, it's a lot easier to get covered with any type of family history of a genetic mutation or multiple cancers in the family.
So what did they tell you to do at the age of 24 when you knew you had the mutation, but...
Yeah, so, you're also at a higher risk for ovarian cancer. So you look at things like getting a hysterectomy and getting a prophylactic mastectomy. Also, at that age, I was still deciding on family time. So as my husband and I were doing family planning, we made a plan at the age of 24 that we wanted to have our children by the age of 30. This was just our plan that worked for us. By the age of 30, I wanted to breastfeed because that's supposed to decrease your risk. And then I wanted to go ahead with some prophylactic surgical stuff. So I did do that. And also each year I would get a mammogram or a breast MRI, and then later on they found out that we should do those every 6 months. So I was doing a mammogram, and then 6 months later I would do a breast MRI. And so I was doing those for years, and then I decided at the age of 32 to go ahead and get the hysterectomy after I was done having kids. So I got rid of most of the chance of getting ovarian cancer.
Yeah.
So you just knew you were going to have 2 kids.
Yeah.
And you were going to just do the hysterectomy, but nothing with the breasts at that point?
At that point, the surgical measures to remove the breasts and to get reconstruction is a lot more invasive. When you have children, being able to pick them up and such was hard. So I had to consider that. So that's why I went the route of decreasing the hormones with getting rid of my ovaries. So I did a complete hysterectomy. And by by the way, menopause is not fun at 32. I don't think it's
It's not fun at 42 either.
I was gonna say,
Just so you know.
I don't think it's fun.
I think
at
I was
any
even younger, actually.
It's not fun at any age, but yes, the doctors warned me I'd go from 32 to 52 overnight, and I felt it.
Wow, what happened?
The body aches, the weight gain, your metabolism shot, just those types of things. Hot flashes were horrible. Yes, kept me up at night, and
that's the one I know, is the keeping you up at night. I would wake up drenched in sweat, and I didn't know why.
Oh, so
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
and that was probably about the age of 40 for
yeah,
me.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I was 32. My poor husband, I'd be
You
waking
had other
up.
stuff
Oh,
going
yeah.
on too.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
at least you got it, your husband got it out of the way,
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, right.
Got kids, got menopause out of the way.
I
There you
know,
go.
he was pretty mad at me because we decided we were done having kids a year before, and I had him go get a vasectomy a year before.
no.
Oh.
So he's like, really? Then you decided on this, son?
Just so you know, my husband did too. So,
Really? Okay.
Yep. He's not the only one.
That's
Yeah,
funny.
It is.
So
Yeah.
you were saying that breastfeeding decreases your chance of getting breast
It
cancer?
helps. It's supposed to help, yes. And also, the hormone-based stuff. So by getting my ovaries out, decreasing the chance of hormonal fed breast cancer. So that was
Okay.
supposed to help. And then they've just found studies where breastfeeding helps. So I was trying to do absolutely everything I could
Right.
to reduce my risk. My mom getting it at 49, the doctors had told me if I got my mastectomy 10 years prior to when she got her diagnosis, I
Right.
should be in the clear. Well, I decided last October I would go ahead. I just felt a real urge, a real kind of push from God
Yeah.
that I should probably get this mastectomy done. I went in and saw doctors, and they got me scheduled within 12 days, which
Wow.
which is unheard of.
Yeah.
So they had to coordinate that with the doctor that would take off the breast and the doctor that would do the reconstruction. Yeah, and so I felt like that was good. But in the back of my mind the whole time I was thinking, gosh, am I doing this for nothing?
Right.
Because you were, what, 34? Or-
Yeah, 36.
Okay, you were
36. And I just kept thinking, gosh, I finally got over this menopause stuff, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm going to put my body through this. And I knew I had an 87% chance of breast cancer, but I'm like, could I be one of those that
Doesn't get it. The
doesn't get it?
13%,
And then
yeah.
I essentially cut off my breast for no reason,
Right.
So that kind of really weighed in the back of my head. I went in and got what was supposed to be a prophylactic mastectomy, which means cutting off your breasts before
Before
you
they get cancer?
get cancer.
Or precancerous? Okay.
And I had just had a clear mammo the month before. I also, during this scheduling process, had multiple breast exams. 3 days after I got the mastectomy, I remember laying in bed, and my mom and my husband were there. I had called the doctors asking, questions about the pain I was in and stuff like that. And I got
Yeah.
a call back from my surgeon, and he said, Angie, I'm like, yeah. I said, yeah, how many times can I take these pills? Different things like that. 'Cause I was having some issues. I've never been a great healer. And he's like, yeah, let's talk about that later. I'm like, okay. And he's like, we got your pathology back, and you had cancer. And I'm like, excuse me?
Really?
He's like, you had cancer. I said, you're joking. And he's like, no, I'm not joking. I said this 3 times. I'm like, you're joking. He's like, no, I'm not joking. He's like, ma'am, I would never joke about cancer. And I said, okay, but like, this is the furthest thing
Yeah.
I thought would happen. So I said, well, you're going to have to repeat that for me then. And I put it on speaker. And he's like, well, who am I talking to? And thank God my husband and my mom were there, because
Yeah.
it was a shock for us all.
Yeah.
Huge shock.
Yeah.
Huge shock, especially since they've done all these tests prior.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I thought I had done everything, but I can honestly say I was never angry, because I felt like God got this out of me before I even knew I had it.
Yeah.
I was one of those lucky people that, sometimes people go through treatment knowing they have the cancer and
Right.
they have a tumor still in them, and they're trying to shrink it. And,
Yeah, so I guess my question is, what stage were you at?
I was stage 1A, which is very low,
That's good.
but the tumor grade was grade 3.
Okay.
They also do a genetic test on the tumor itself when it's estrogen positive or progesterone positive, and mine was estrogen positive. And so they sent it off and they did a tumor analysis on it. They come back with, it's called an oncotype score, and mine was 48, which I know doesn't mean a lot to people, but that's really high. The higher the number,
Yeah.
I think it's 1 to 100, but the higher the number means the greater chance for it to come back, the more aggressive it is. But it also means the more it will respond to chemo.
And that's a good thing.
It is
Yeah.
a good thing.
So in my mind, I thought, well, the tumor's out. I'm not going to have treatment,
Yeah,
right?
because they
Right.
caught it at stage 1A.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No.
Wrong.
With my genetic mutation, my young age, and that oncotype score, I had to do the most aggressive treatment they could do. So chemo it was.
So tell us about chemo.
Chemo was rough. The first one, adrian cytoxin, I believe, AC chemo was my first 4 treatments. They were okay. Definitely at week 2, I lost my hair. I was more worried about actually losing my eyebrows and my eyelashes than my hair because I don't know, I was just afraid I'd look weird, you know.
I looked
Yeah.
weird.
And I did. I did.
Just so you
yes.
know.
Yes. My family was really, really supportive. So it was a week after Thanksgiving. So we did a big party at Thanksgiving, and everybody shaved their heads. My mom even
Oh
shaved,
Really?
my gosh.
shaved her head
That is too
again.
cool.
And she had already, you know, lost her hair with cancer 15 years prior. So that was a really big deal. My husband and son, and the rest were men in my family, but
Yeah.
they all shaved their heads for me. And we were kind of in solidarity, and so I had already shaved my head, and I felt like, okay, I don't have a Shar-Pei puppy head or anything back there. You know, you never know what your skull's going to look like.
Yes?
And
I know, that's funny you say that.
and so I was feeling okay about it, but I got a little sick, you know, nausea, that kind of stuff. Definitely started with the weakness and fatigue. But then I had to start the paclitaxel, and that was my next treatment. I was supposed to
Right.
get 12 of those. Those were weekly. And that didn't go as smoothly as the AC, which the AC was supposed to be the hard one. So that was disappointing.
The easy one ended up being the hard one?
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
had more treatments.
Yeah,
Sounds like of
yeah.
those. Yeah.
So I ended up after the first one, I felt like I had breathing problems, and I kept calling and talking to nurses and saying I just don't feel right. I don't feel like I can breathe right, and they're like, take your inhaler. You know, you're all right. And I was very fatigued when I'd go to the bathroom just to get up from my bed. You know, 5 feet away to the bathroom, and
Right.
I knew there was something wrong. So another one of those urging things. My dad took me to chemo that next day. I had made my daughter, my 10-year-old, sleep with me for a couple nights and kind of urged her to, if I looked bad, if mom looks bad, you need to call 911 because my husband
Yeah.
was out of town. And so anyways, long story short, I went in and I insisted I didn't get it done. And it was good I didn't. I ended up having to be hospitalized for a week. I was allergic to the chemo.
Wow. Have you ever heard of that before?
No.
I haven't.
Not that chemo's scary enough as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gave me pneumonia. So I had pneumonitis is what it was called. So I ended up being hospitalized for about a week. And I did have breathing problems, but my oxygen level was okay. So that's why they thought I was fine. So another one of those urging things that you got to listen to.
You
your-
have to
Yeah.
advocate for yourself, don't you?
You
do
really
have
do.
to, because it could have
Absolutely.
really.
Oh yeah, it would have been really bad if I had continued. So they switched it, and I made it through 10 altogether of those treatments. The last 2, I just couldn't go on. I ended up being pretty sick. I was on Benadryl constantly for still being allergic. It was in
Right.
the same class as the other
Another
one,
one.
but yeah, so
You're making it through
not
though.
as bad. I could breathe.
Yeah.
So
That's
that
a
was
good thing.
That
you
was
know,
good.
that breathing is always good.
And breathing is good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
how did, you were just throwing curveball after curveball, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah. I
God's
was.
got a, some days he's just interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah.
Out of all of those things, losing your breast, losing your hair, your eyebrows, how did you cope with all that? I mean, how did you make it through on a day-to-day basis?
Well, when I got them removed, I was in a different mindset because I was doing this prophylactically.
Oh,
So
Right.
good point.
it was a different mindset. So I was really concerned about how I was going to look. Am I going to get nipple tattoos? Because I got my nipples removed also.
Right.
Was I going to, reconstruct those? Those are options also. How was I going to feel when I looked at myself in the mirror? I was really concerned about all those things. Really, everything changed once I got that cancer diagnosis. I said, I don't care what I look like anymore. I just want to live.
Right.
I have 2 kids and I have a husband, and I really just want to be around for them. Now, through it, I definitely had some body image issues, and I still do. I'm okay with the breasts for some reason. But the fat suit I feel like I'm living in is rough. I was on prednisone, a steroid, for quite a while. And losing my hair was rough. Even it coming back, I get all the time, your hair is so cute and curly. And I'm like,
It's adorable.
I'm like, oh gosh, but like in my head, I'm like, I just really do not like my hair, because I don't know what to do with it. So it's just different for me, and you get that from people. They're like, well, at least you have hair. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, at least I do have hair. But you're kind of in a different boat because you look at yourself and you don't look like yourself.
Right.
So
Well, and
I
it's
think
not like
that's
you're
hard.
complaining. You're
No.
you're just
Like I
saying
just
that-
prefer it to be long and straight the way it was. But
Yeah.
I keep saying I really would love to have a messy bun again.
I don't even know what that is anymore.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Just like you.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
So did you have to do radiation or anything?
I did not. So it didn't go to the lymph nodes. I had a second surgery after the mastectomy because normally they do that lymph node removal with that surgery, but they didn't know I had cancer, so they didn't do
Yeah.
that. So I went back in for that, and praise God, that was negative. So
Yeah.
I didn't have to get radiation because I had the mastectomy and the stage or the grade of the cancer. So they just did the chemotherapy. Now I am on a hormone blocker, which I'll be on for at least 5 years.
Right.
So do you think it really helped you to have that hysterectomy ahead of time? Or did it even matter? I was just wondering
I know.
because I don't know how the hormones really
Yeah.
affected
So
the cancer
it's
you
shocking. Yeah, it's shocking to me that mine was estrogen based. The estrogen is primarily made in your ovaries, but you do produce estrogen in other parts of
Yeah,
your body.
right.
And so I had still enough in me to feed that cancer. Now I do believe if I had my ovaries, it would have fed that quicker.
Right.
It would have grown more rapidly, and I
Could have spread.
Yeah.
Could have went to the
Yeah.
lymph node.
Absolutely. So I feel at peace that helped in that aspect. Also, ovarian cancer is a lot harder to detect than breast cancer, so
Yes.
I rid myself of that for the most part.
Yeah. Well,
So-
good thing.
Yeah.
So how did you parent during all of this? Because
Especially during the holidays.
but you actually homeschool your
I
children,
do.
which
Oh,
I'm
really?
like, how in the world, Jamie?
On chemo, you homeschooled your children?
I did. I actually had my niece also. So I had a 6th grade, 4th grade, and 2nd grades that
Oh my
I was
God.
homeschooling.
Bless her.
Yeah, really.
Really, I'm a teacher, and I mean, but I don't. I at least when my kids were at school when I was recovering,
Yeah.
and your kids were grown,
Yeah.
and so I couldn't imagine.
No.
It was, I really found their strengths. My son would help me with, like when I had surgery, he helped me with my drainage tubes. He was only 7. And I found that he's really into medicine. I
He
didn't
might be a
Really?
doctor because
Yeah,
of her.
absolutely. And I didn't know that before. I taught him how to take out some of my stitches that were irritating me and things
Wow.
like that. I am a medical assistant and a rad tech, so I did have some medical background, but I did find some strengths in them. So he really took care of me in that way. My daughter, I found out she always had loved to cook, so she kind of took over cooking lunch and dinner and making sure everybody ate each day. And
Yeah.
she did a great job bringing me what I could tolerate and things like that. My husband was great when he could be home, and my sister-in-law also lived with us for a while, and she helped out, but they both worked full-time and they were gone a lot. So the kids really picked up the slack. My niece was a sweetie, and they all prayed for me, and I just say we did school when I felt good, and I gave myself grace when I didn't feel well. So I might come out and say, okay, this is what I need you to do for history. Come back when you're done, and I'll come back out and tell you the next thing to do. So I'd go take a little nap because I
Aw.
didn't feel good, and and then I'd come out and say, okay, well, we're gonna do Bible study now, or we're gonna do Spanish, and I would do as much as I could, and then I would go take another little nap. So, but I found out they're a lot more independent than I thought they were.
And it's important to note too that she said she gave herself grace when she needed to rest, because I think a lot of times people that are going through this just want to keep going,
Yes.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Well, they don't give yourselves permission to,
Right.
to
exactly
take a break. You
Yeah.
know, especially when you got 3 little ones running through the house too.
I'm naturally a doer, so it was really hard for me to get that through my head that
You needed a rest.
like my body physically couldn't go on any further. So I kind of was at that point where I just had to make sure
Yeah.
I went down for naps or
Yeah.
Well, and that
rested.
gives you a chance to heal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I was able to be more intentional with my time that I did have with them. Instead of being half there, you know, through the day. I was able to be there fully for spurts of time, and I think that was good, and also absolutely gave me time to heal because my body needed that through all of that.
Exactly. Wow.
I'm amazed. I mean, not that you didn't have enough on your plate. You were on chemo, you were allergic to chemo, and then you were homeschooling and single parenting in a, you know, for
When her husband was out of
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know
Yeah.
what that's like too,
Yeah.
because my husband goes out of town
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really lucky that my boys are older and I was able to just lay on the couch. And actually I was really fortunate too because they understood what cancer meant.
Yeah.
How about your kids? Were they able to grasp what cancer was, or were they just beautiful young children and they just kind of did their thing? And
My thing going through this is I learned honesty is the best. So I was very honest with them before the mastectomy. I don't know that I really said, hey, there's a chance this could come back cancer, because I really had no thoughts that would.
right.
But when it did come back cancer, I think they were more upset because we were supposed to go to Disney World, and
Oh.
we couldn't go to Disney World.
You had to cancel your trip?
We did. It was so sad. It was so
Well, I
sad.
hope you at least
We
got your
did-
money back.
Yeah, it was a fight with the airline, but
Oh, yeah.
we did end up going after. It was called our victory trip. After all
Good.
was done, we went to Disney World.
good.
But yeah, they did really well. I think I was just very honest through the whole thing. This is what's going on. You know, I have to do this. It's going to make me sick, and they still are very sweet with giving me grace.
Right.
At this point, even today, they were like, "Mom, you seem tired. Why don't you go take a nap? We'll finish science together and whatever." So they have learned that they can help Mom too, and I've put more on them, but I think it's been good for them. They've really
Yeah.
matured and grown, and you know, kids seem to make things up in their head if you're not fully honest with them.
Right.
And a lot of the times, the things they make up in their mind is worse than what's actually going on.
Exactly.
So
I
I-
completely agree with you. I thought it was so important that we told our children everything as it was happening and just be frank with them. And, you know, kids are resilient. And they
Absolutely.
also, I feel like if they know what's going on, they're more apt to help you.
Yes.
And, you know, understand that you're not going to be able to play that game with them,
Right.
or you're not going to be able to make it to a football game or whatever it was that I had missed
Yeah.
because I had to
Absolutely.
heal.
Yep, you're
Yeah.
totally right. And we, you know, prayed through all of this, and I thought, how cool is this that you guys get to see how amazing life is, how amazing God is, that like
Yeah.
you can see His grace in such a magnificent way at such a young age. How you can go from seeing your mom like literally almost dead
Yeah.
to coming back to life, you know. And I'm still healing. I'm still trying to get strong, and
Yeah.
they're able to see that you can do many things that you think might be impossible in life.
Yeah. And you're also a role model for the children too, because they learn that cancer isn't always a scary thing, isn't always a
Yeah.
terminal illness.
Yeah.
You know, so you're being a really good role model for them too. That is great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how about your husband? How did he feel through all this? I mean, honestly, you just went in there being proactive,
Right.
And then all of a sudden, this roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
What do you have any thoughts on?
I think, you know, I think he held it all together for me.
Yeah.
But I think it was very hard for him. I think, you know, he, I was very candid and honest in a blog post that I did. And one time he did a blog post for me and put it in, and I didn't know he did that. And when I read it, it was all about how kind of like my beauty changed. How, you know, physically, I was pretty before. You know, I had long
Right.
hair.
She's
and
pretty now. Are you kidding me?
you're so
Yeah.
I'm
sweet.
serious.
And but he said, you know, it's so much more than that now. And I think he learned that too. We were still pretty young, so
Yeah.
I think he got to learn maybe how beautiful I was on the inside too. And I think he always knew that, but I think it was it just kind of worked on him in that way that. You know, he had to see me fade, you know, and you
Yeah.
always want to grow old with your partner, and you know that their looks will fade, and he had to see that fade right in front of his eyes in a very short period of time. And he stuck with me, and he was strong, and he was my rock, and he He did. He kept us going. He kept us together. So,
That's amazing. That's just beautifully said.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So what got you through the tough times?
Well, I did get up every morning and do it most mornings unless I was sick. And I did a Bible study with my husband, a short one, that would just kind of keep things in check. It was cancer patients who wrote just little excerpts about,
Yeah.
and sometimes it would be funny, you know, something about their hair or their eyebrows missing or something funny and get us snickering. And sometimes it got us talking about the realness about what was going on. I kept a journal, so I wrote a lot, and then I did the blog. And I think for me that was very therapeutic to get it out on pen and paper,
Right.
and hopefully share with other people who could use that stuff down the road. And that kind of helped. And I always say, you know, it was really hard, but I wouldn't give it back. The experience was something I wouldn't give back. It changed us.
Made you closer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad that made you closer.
yeah, absolutely.
And I can relate to the writing too, because I wrote a lot during my experience as well, and I do think it's therapeutic.
Yes,
So I mean, that's just a great tip for anybody going through this.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Or remember where you put your journal.
Yeah.
That's what my problem was. I had a journal,
Yeah,
and I was going to journal,
yeah.
but I lost my journal.
Oh no. See, and that's
Well, I use the computer.
that's
so-
why it's good when you do it on the computer. That's
Yeah,
true.
then you don't have to worry about that.
Well, I ended up getting neuropathy so bad I couldn't hardly type.
Oh.
So, Angie, thank you ever so much for sharing your journey with us and bringing
Absolutely.
everything out.
Yeah.
We
Thanks for
really
having me.
enjoyed having you.
I really appreciate it.
Do you have one last word of wisdom to tell anybody?
Just if you feel an urging, listen to yourself, listen to God, listen to your, you know, listen to that voice inside you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Thank
well,
you,
thank you
Angie.
so much.
Thank you guys. I appreciate
And join
it.
us again for another Candid Chats on Cancer.
Be well.